Hey there, I'm Jody Vance.
I'm George Affleck.
And it's time for...
UnSpun.
You got a little angry on there on the UnSpun. What is up?
I think it might have to do some of the wine I had last night.
a little meeting in Whistler.
Yeah, I had a client meeting that went a bit late.
We should
so
see
I'm
George.
fine though, I'm fine.
Of course you are. You're just going to be a little bit extra bristly today. What did my mom call it? Brittle.
Brittle. I think my voice is probably one octave lower too. But
it
it's
sounds
generally
great,
a good sign, I suppose, that I've had a fun time.
Well,
anyways,
episode 14, UnSpun.
Yes.
You can always follow us on Twitter at UnSpun Podcast, or you are...
George _Affleck.
He can't really remember his Twitter handle. This is going to be a very interesting podcast today. Yes, George _Affleck. Excellent follow, by the way. Did you win an award? You were nominated for an award?
Why, yes, I did. Well, kind of. It was a team award for CTV's coverage of the election. That.
Five me.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, we won
Well
for
done.
best coverage. And Diane Watts and I were the color commentators or whatever.
Analysts.
Oh yeah, it's analysts. Analysts.
He left it all in the bottle of wine. Yeah. Okay, so you got to follow George because always giving you sort of some perspective on the politics. That's what really was the inspiration for UnSpun, is that you and I talked a lot on the radio and on television when it came to political pieces. I've actually had one of your colleagues at CTV, Carrie Adams, reached out and said, I love your podcast.
All right.
Always watch it. So thank you, Carrie. Shout out to you. Because people like the fact that we take everyday political noise and kind of break it down a little bit and really look behind the curtain, behind the curtain of Oz. Well, the first topic today, however, is a little bit veiled for us. We don't have the inside scoop on what happened today, but it was a big global arrest.
Yes.
Julian Assange, yes, of WikiLeaks, taken out of the
Busted.
Ecuadorian...
Dragged out and looked like...
David Letterman.
David Letterman, like that beard. He looked rough. I mean,
I love David Letterman. Don't take that the wrong way, but dude, you should shave.
I think he's 10 years younger than me, so, you know... I
You're
think,
not 57.
54, 55 soon.
Hey, easy on adding the years there, Pally.
I'm pushing 60.
But he is...
When do I get my free bus card?
47 years old, and a local connection is Pamela Anderson is pissed on Twitter.
Pamela Anderson is your biggest champion. That's interesting.
You know,
I mean,
she's got opinions, not afraid to share them. I kind of like that.
Yes, no, she's actually, obviously with the whole animal rights movement and all those things that she's been very vocal about. But yeah, she seems to be saying, hey, this is terrible that he's being arrested. He was dragged out of the embassy, which, you know, you sort of, we were talking about this, you know, like churches protecting people.
Yeah.
And usually what happens if they say, you know what, your time's up, they kind of find a way for you to find somewhere else.
They give you a
window. I think he was somewhere else before that, wasn't he? I forget. But anyways, generally that seems to be the protocol of when people are hiding.
That's not how it went down this morning.
They just let the police come in there and drag him out. And, you know, the shots are quite like, wow, okay.
Well, and then it's a what happens next. And there are some people that are saying, good, this guy deserves to be arrested. And there are others like the ACLU that are saying, you know, hold up a sec, because this is a precedent setter when it comes to journalists.
Freedom of press.
Julian Assange would consider himself somebody who is a disseminator of information. How you gather your intel should not matter, is what some say.
Yeah.
You should not be able to be prosecuted for such things. But if Julian Assange is extradited to the United States, in my understanding, and charged, this opens the door for journalists, maybe in the U.S. and Canada, being held to account in, I don't know, China, Russia, Iran, pick your
repercussions
place. Right?
like we're seeing in Vancouver related to our decisions on
yes,
stuff.
Huawei.
What's interesting, is that freedom of press, but also, you know, and I've been very vocal about transparency of government and transparency in general, and how do we, you know, a lot of what he released and a lot of these people who hack into are releasing information that is just not made available through any kind of search, through any kind of FOI,
freedom of information.
So yeah, it certainly goes. It will raise a lot of questions if he's put in jail, and then what are the rights of the media? What are the rights of what does that say about transparency of government?
Right.
So it's going to be
and it makes
interesting
people
to
say
follow.
like, what is government trying to hide? Julian Assange was trying to, you know, put out there what the government is trying to hide. And the argument on the other side is there are people that are gathering intel, that are spies and whatnot, whose protection is vital. and that there are national security issues associated with it. It's a very complex. We spent 45 minutes just talking about this prior to hitting record, and we don't know the answer on this, but we're going to keep tabs on it because it is a global journalism related story, and it comes back to
it has repercussions. Well, you may not agree with the stuff he released and the way he did it, and
people say he got Trump elected.
There's those, and that he worked with Russia and all these things. So yes, okay, maybe that's all true, but then you have to also think about the impact this will have on the freedom of press in general.
So there's no left or right or wrong or whatever here. It's a discussion that needs to be.
Yeah, and actually, you look at what Facebook is clamping down on the hate speech, and there are people that will argue that that is also freedom of speech is being pushed down by because government's saying to Facebook, you got to stop doing this. England, for example. So, where does it stop? There are many who advocate you have to let people speak. There was a long time ago, I don't know if anybody, you have to be quite old to remember this, but the North Shore News had a columnist named Doug Collins, and he was very controversial because he wrote columns and he was didn't believe that Holocaust happened, and he would write about this stuff. He was a denier.
Oh, man.
And very controversial, and people said he should be silenced, and the North Shore News went through many court cases saying no, if you silence him, you silence all media, and they spent a lot of time, and they won in the end. They won every single case against him to allow him. He became an icon while what he was saying was wrong.
Yeah.
He became an iconic in that it was a fight for freedom of speech in Canada, in the case of the North Shore News. So,
which is why when people say the Earth is flat, we just sit there and go,
My son's watched a documentary about that. That's
we could go on and on.
Yeah.
When is a protest not a protest and an event? Is it when you book a band?
Speaking of dragging people out of things.
I'm so upset. You know, I ranted about 420 2 months ago here on this podcast because, let me just put this out there. Smoke them if you got them. Buy the pot legally. I am a huge supporter
Which it is.
Exactly.
I don't know if anybody knows that. Marijuana
medicinal
is legal.
marijuana. I mean, I've literally seen it help and save lives on many levels in my immediate family. Long before it was legalized, it helped my uncle. So this is not an anti-pot, you're not allowed to smoke or consume whatever you want. I just don't want it happening at the beach in a massive form where I have to clean it up and you have to clean it up, where the people that are putting it on are selling it. It is clearly an event. It is a money-making machine, George.
Yep.
You've been inside City Hall. You've watched this happen year after year on 420.
Yes.
It's not like it's a surprise that it happens at this time.
No, and they moved it to that site a couple of years ago.
Yeah, back to the art gallery with you people. I loved it there.
And we had a council previously that was very open to marijuana and allowed all the stores to open up in the city, and so they really kind of were like, yeah, it's fine. And that was before it was legalized. I don't know if Vision were in power now, what they would do now, but of course you're hearing calls for bring in the police, stop this, like just drag those people out of there. There's that one argument.
You're talking about me?
There are many people that are saying that.
I'm not saying drag people out of it and make it a big, clash.
But how could it not become that?
But just stop them from setting up the night before.
I know, but the fear is by the police would be that it would become a riot. And then you have all those images of the police in riot gear dragging a bunch of people high on marijuana out of an event. It's just bad optics, and I can see with the fear. I have a solution though.
Tell me. Seriously?
Note this, please, Mr. Mayor.
Stand by.
Stand
George
by.
Affleck.
John Cooper on Park Board. Note this down.
Yeah.
I thought, here's an idea. It's a crazy idea, maybe. But why doesn't the city get in there a couple days before, set up a bunch of booths and set up a stage and have a police hiring fair? And police are looking for people, and we'll be there 24 hours a day to take applications for the Vancouver Police Department.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay,
and there'll be entertainment.
This is genius.
Mm-hmm. It'll run to the 21st of April. Unfortunately,
set something up on the space.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Block the rest
legally,
of the
of course.
Oh, of course, with a permit.
Yes, with a permit, and they'll pay for all the costs.
Can I go down there and have a glass of wine on the beach? Because I would love that.
Well, I do almost every weekend in the summer, anyways. But don't get me started on that whole issue.
We will. We'll get onto that after 420 because it is going to happen. Cypress Hill will be the headlining act. I was listening to the Linda Steele show yesterday, and Dana Larson was on, and he's like, "It's not an event, it's a protest. It's not an event, it's a protest." And then they went to break and came back, and he's like, "So for the event, we have Cypress Hill." And we were like, "You just called it an event." Well, sometimes events are, protests are actually events. It's like, get a permit. Why not?
I think they gave $60,000 last year to pay for the cost. couple hundred to actually clean it up. So,
and there are people
net
saying,
loss.
well, I don't like the Pride Parade, and that's a protest. And it's like, the Pride Parade has a permit. If 420 had a permit, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
And the Pride Parade actually canceled their street party because they said policing costs were too high, so they couldn't do their event. So they were legitimately going, we're trying to have an event, we can't afford it. I do agree that police in events in our city, the city is being it is too expensive now to hold events in our city. We have to find a better way that they keep upcharging. It's gotten a bit out of control. So,
dude, I couldn't get a hot dog at the concession
that's right.
stand
That was
Carnarvon
your
Park.
your little protest there. Your little event.
For the better part of a year, I've had people I've known for years and years and years come up to me and go, hot dogs. Because you couldn't get a hot dog because you can't get a permit
so what you
to
should
sell
do,
the concessions, because the same permit, which is something that I learned through Sarah Kirby-Young, was you require the same permit for that hot dog stand as you would for the Celebration of Light or for the Pride Parade.
Crazy.
Or it is crazy.
I have a solution for you on that one too.
Okay, tell me.
You say the hot dog is a giant doobie. And
right, and it's a protest.
It's a protest. And we're just selling a whole bunch of them to the kids.
Would it be wrong that it's 11-year-olds?
Well, it's not really. It's just like,
what we did?
It's not a protest, it's an event. It's an event,
That's
it's
right.
a protest. It's not
Well,
a hot
what we
dog,
did-
it's a really giant doobie. It's a doobie, it's a hot dog.
We went to Costco, bought a bunch of hot dogs, set up a barbecue, not in the concession stand, because you're allowed to give them away.
You should be jailed.
Well, we gave them away.
Call the cops. Where's my phone?
The cops were on side. They actually came for a hot dog.
Oh, really?
Well, they saw it on the news. Global ended up sending a camera. I was like, oh God, this is going to be bad. But it was actually very good. The only downside, the only negative, and here's a George fact for you, is that when they took...
Hey, I only get to do stuff. I only get to make up stuff.
Okay, fair enough. Jody fact, they were taking B-roll of the kids playing Little League baseball, and because Little League's fun and kids are fun, even though both teams played very, very well, they only showed blooper plays. So the kids saw themselves in the news going, I made like 7 catches. That was the one I didn't get. So
that would be actually all of my baseball career right there with all those.
Well, let's see if I can get a hot dog this season, because practice started last night. So.
But your point though is, I think this is valid. The challenge, I think, with all legitimate organizations, whether small or large, are looking at this going, well, what the hell? Why bother? Why bother? And so the city either has to find a way to lower those other events costs so they can get in there and do these things so they don't feel like they're being taken advantage of while the marijuana guys get to have this big event at no cost.
This is why I love talking to you, George. Who do we need to go to make that happen? Because it feels like we run into a wall of communications people. Oh,
I think there might be 43 of them.
43 communications people. Everybody have yourself a sip. But seriously, like,
That vodka's strong today.
where do we go? Like, how do you? I remember it was years ago. My cousin Tina, who's into, she does this Fleur de Ville, this beautiful flower event thing, and she's always dreamt of doing like a pop-up French flower market, an early morning flower market.
Sounds
where
lovely.
You can find, it sounds awesome.
Shut her down.
Can't get a permit.
No way.
How
Yes.
How is that not a community engagement thing that would just be wonderful? Set up at 6 a.m., you're out of there by noon.
Yep. I couldn't
not?
agree with you more.
Who does she go to? Who do we
There's
go
a guy who's American. I can't remember his name.
He's
but
American?
No, the mayor.
Oh.
Wait, but he might be American. Some guy's a mayor.
Kennedy.
Yes.
That would be,
I would say that the mayor is he's not really anywhere on this file, and I think he needs to step it up.
Maybe we should start a little writing campaign.
Yeah.
If not, we can set up, maybe at Spanish Banks, have a little wine and Strongbow cider protest this
I like
summer.
it.
Let's do it.
Brewing
I wonder if
Owl
anybody-
Wine Fest.
All 42 of you
There.
watching can show up. Okay, let's get on to some more politics.
Yes.
Let's keep it local for now. A lot of movement on social media, a lot of brouhaha being made about development at the south end of the Burrard Street Bridge on the Squamish Nation.
So not the one in Kitts, that 6-story one, which also has been getting a lot of.
Oh, that one at
which,
2nd and Larch?
Yeah.
There's a lot of NIMBYism in my neighborhood. I mean, I live on the west side in Kitsilano. I've grown up there. Family's always been there. And I'm really surprised at people that are, my beautiful 100-year-old house, I don't want that at the end of the block. It's like,
But Larch,
grow up,
isn't there a
people.
whole bunch of 3-story walk-ups in that area?
There's two 8-story buildings within a block of the 2nd at Larch.
Yeah.
There's some significant apartment structures. The whole idea of Kitsilano being cool was rooted in it being an excellent place to rent, where a community of people could come together and not necessarily know how to cook, so they support all the restaurants. And they go to the pubs and they drink their beers every day because they can. you know,
Living the dream.
living the dream. But 3,000 rental units built on the Squamish Nation property
yeah, so
down in
that's another big
Vanier.
project,
So that's
yep.
down. When I first heard
coming
of
off
this,
the
I'm like,
bridge, right?
we need rental units in the city. Let's do this. And people are like, we need public consultation on this. I thought, well, can't they do whatever they want? And
Yes.
they can, but they do need the city, right?
They have to, first of all, there's been talk about developing that site for
A decade.
A long time. And the Squamish Nation, I know, have come to the city, and one of the things they rely on the city for, and if they would put 3,000 units there, they have to pay for all the services, so water, sewer, all that stuff. They go through the city or through Metro, and so they have a deal right now, which is based on basically nobody living there. I would imagine the city would renegotiate something if there were a lot more residents there. So there is some process that has to go, and even electricity, where's that coming from? That's a big issue sometimes when you talk about development in laneway homes and things like that. The challenge of mass development in density is all these services, and how do you get the services to these new homes? And it's a complicated process.
And that goes back to the city planning.
City planning, and also Metro's role, and because it's this unique situation where it's almost like a little island in itself. So it cannot have the city services if it wants, and can do its own water if they want. That would be very complicated.
So just for our listener viewers' sake, it is like where Vanier Park and the Coast Guard station is down. Underneath the Burrard Street Bridge, to basically where Penny Farthing Lane is at Granville Island, where False Creek kind of starts. In between, it's like bramble bushes.
There's a big outdoor sign that they put on there, right? This digital sign that they've got.
Right.
There. So it's basically right there.
Right underneath that billboard. And I know from years ago the plan was to put a big convention center and some not realty. See, my brain's gone in your bottle of wine up at Whistler. I wasn't even there.
It's a good bottle.
Outlet retail is what I'm thinking of. But it was going to be sort of commercial space, and now the shift is to rental space. And given the fact that affordability is such a nightmare, wouldn't it be great to have a big area in a prime spot in town with great proximity to outdoor space and Granville Island and what's being built up, and you can walking distance or biking distance to downtown Vancouver. I mean, there's a lot of upside to this.
There is, and also Concord Pacific bought all that brewery site behind, which is classed industrial.
Yeah.
And so they will probably go to City Hall eventually once they finish way over there by the viaduct section to rezone that. But they can't. They're limited because of the Metro regulations we have on industrial space. So, but industrial space, if you look at Mount Pleasant, is what is industrial space? Is a software company industrial? Apparently so now, as that was changed in the last term. The definition of industrial includes software development. So
how complicated is it to change zoning like that?
If it's industrial, it's very challenging because of the deal we have as part of the Metro plan. We have this sort of regional plan where you say, okay, we're going to commit this much space to industrial, protected industrial space. So you're not allowed to really extract it because of that deal we have.
It's not just a check mark on some piece
but you
of
can
paper
change
somewhere.
the definition of what that is. So, and that's what we've done in Vancouver. We've loosened up the definition to make it more office-y, really, than industrial. But it's still protected and won't have homes on it. Because I know they're in Squamish, they have a lot of challenges there where people are, in the last election, it was a big issue where they were talking about, we're building too many homes and we're not building enough, we're getting rid of too much industrial and office space and putting we need to have these businesses here to have a viable community. Otherwise,
people have to live here and work here, not just
otherwise
live
you're just a bedroom community of Vancouver.
So speaking of looseness,
yes,
money laundering, part 2 of the German report came out this past week, and David Eby making a number of statements, and even on Twitter speaking to the
How
fact
could
that
nobody have asked this question? How many police are working on this file? 1, 2, 10, 30? 0? 0. It's amazing, and I don't. Is it almost like one of those questions that's so stupid that nobody thought even that would be, like you think that, like it's like amazing to me that it would be. We all just assumed, but nobody ever asked, and there it was sitting in the reason we have money laundering is nobody's been working on the file.
So Officer Hackett with the RCMP, who put out a statement immediately after this all happened, and he said that is not at all what is going. There are a lot of officers that are just not in that office that are working on this file.
Really, they're doing a great job.
Right. Okay. I tried. Both sides, fair and balanced. But
we have a problem.
the roles and
Houston,
responsibilities.
we got a problem.
Do we have to wait until money laundering hits in Ottawa? Because we're way out here on the other side of the Rockies getting decimated by billions.
Well, there's a lot of casinos in Hull, right in Ottawa there, and big casino right there. Is there money laundering going on there? It's a good question. I mean, they don't have them in Ottawa, but they certainly have casinos in Hull, or what? It's not called Hull, they call it
Ottawa Hull.
Yeah, but they call it a different name.
Oh, is it?
I don't know. Anyways,
Okay.
across the
Wow,
across
we're
the
full
river.
of information for you today.
Anyways, they've got that big casino right across the water there,
Yes.
and so maybe the RCMP, if they put their attention to other places, they might discover that there's money laundering. I guess the benefit is we all know what money laundering is now. Before, you'd watch a movie and you'd be going, they'd say, "Oh, these guys are money laundering." And you're like, "Yeah, money laundering." And you didn't know what it was.
So you read my column.
That's right.
Because that's how I opened my column. I'm like, I used to think that money laundering was just, in The Godfather or The Sopranos. And now it's like, oh, no, it can happen in all areas, allegedly. But I read Sam Cooper's columns and Kathy Tomlinson's columns, and I'm shocked that and grateful to those investigative journalists who are bringing to the attention of our leaders that this is happening. I mean, okay. And my column is all about, like, I'm tired of the blame game. It was the Liberals. No, it's the NDP. It was so-and-so. It was such and such. It's the...
But we have to admit this is a federal issue.
Is it? I need to understand
Well,
it. I just wanted to stop.
you sent a Douglas Todd article this morning that was talking about these fancy homes that were owned in Richmond. They were bought by offshore satellite families, and the dad would be working wherever, and the kids would grow up here. And I remember I actually used to teach English to a family like that in the late 80s when I was at university, and that's exactly the scenario. And I didn't even think about that scenario of the fact that there was no taxes being paid because his income was not in Canada. Yeah. So that's federal. Money laundering itself is tracked by the RCMP. That's federal. So I do feel like the federal government, successive federal governments that have let us down on this.
They're so busy over there and dealing with SNC Lavalin and caucus issues. I mean, is this just a lack of resources? Have we grown so much that we're the Vancouver model where the organized crime can come in and go, oh, watch what we do to these Canadians. This is so funny. Watch this.
Well, that's the laughing stock. So you hear that. I heard an interview on NW about that, and they were sort of a laughing stock in the world as far as the flexibility that we've provided.
Right. Because it does allegedly, according to the stories by Sam Cooper, and the one that really hit me hard, because it's one thing to see our real estate shoot through the roof because of money coming in and needing to be moved and cleaned and whatnot.
It was part of it.
But really there's that, like, the money that's being cleaned is often drug money, because you can buy fentanyl cheaply in China, bring it here, sell it for like literally 1,000 times more, and then the proceeds from that need to be cleaned somehow so that you can buy more fentanyl to put into so part of our opioid crisis is rooted in the money that we're talking about in money laundering. And for me, that's why, like, I don't care which government, I don't care who.
Can we just fix
who
this?
was addicted to the money that was somehow coming in, because honestly, criminals that are washing money don't care if they lose 20-30% of it if they can have those proceeds. So somebody's got to step up. And
do we need a commission on this, though? This whole desire to have a commission on this, an inquiry? I mean, I don't know. I think we know what the problem is. Let's just fix it. Let's get to going here. Because the NDP and the Liberals were in there together provincially.
Yeah.
The NDP had a lot, and they never really brought it up and brought this up as an issue that I remember. So clearly the ball was dropped. Over a long period of time, and I think it really should be, let's fix this moving forward. Enough is enough. Let's get going on this.
Yeah, which is how people of Surrey feel about the policing problems there, and what Mayor Doug McCallum, and this is all happening very quickly now because we're talking about RCMP and the money laundering, looking at removing the RCMP in Surrey and putting a police force there.
Yeah.
This is all sort of interconnected because policing's a problem.
Well, I think that if you think putting in a new police force is a magic bullet to, pardon the pun, but to deal with crime, I think you're mistaken. There's a lot more things going on there. And in Vancouver, we have a challenge where we can't get police. There's almost always 70 to 100 vacancies of positions in the police force because they can't recruit fast enough.
Wow.
And so if this new police force in Surrey opens up, where are these people coming from? Policing in general is not a career that's hugely desired by a new generation. And so it'll be interesting to see how they do that. And the streets are ever more
dangerous, frankly. So it's not like I'm looking at my 11-year-old going, you should aspire to be a police officer. because it's scary.
Yeah. And
The-
so the
the
RCMP
tension.
has this wealth of
Yeah.
police that they could pull from if Surrey needed it. And that's why I think one of the councils, I think it was a councillor asking that, oh no, it was a former mayor or former guy who ran against McCallum talking about we should have had a third party report come to council to analyze everything, including things like that. Where are these police going to come from? Who's going to hire them? Where are they going to be trained?
So these are all like
What
little
impact does that have on the region?
catchphrase, sort of get me elected, sort of tossed out campaign promises that really in the undernight, if you unspin them, they're way more complicated than we're just going to get rid of the RCMP and put our own police force in here. And then say, I'm not going to tell you how much it's going to cost now.
Yes, well, interesting. You know, in Surrey they have a line item on their taxes. It says how much they pay for police.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know this till recently. And so actually, it's $80. I think it's $80. Most people pay around that per year for their police in Surrey. That'll probably triple, but they'll be able to see it on their taxes because it'll be written right there. That was something they brought in about 15 years ago, apparently.
Wow. Well, we're going to talk more about this certainly in the weeks to come here on Unspun. You're always up to date if you're reading the Orca. You go to theorca.ca, which is probably where you found this podcast, but we're also available anywhere you get your podcasts. But at the Orca on Twitter, you can follow me at Jody Vance, at
George_Affleck. I did it.
You're on fire, my friend. Did it. And read my column, The Middle, on Wednesdays. But we got to wrap this up because it's nap time.
We didn't get into Jody Wilson-Raybould.
Do you want to put a little?
No,
we'll
I
talk
just-
about her next week. Actually, it was Jane Philpott.
Yeah,
this
I know.
week,
I
but
thought it.
she was keeping stirring.
She got
it
her
up.
slapped for
Yeah,
trying
there
to
you
do
go.
something.
It's far enough down on the headline food chart that
Called
it
it.
didn't even make Unspun for this week.
Yeah. Thanks.
See ya.